Good afternoon, Jeff Dawson from Dallas, Texas. Yeah, let me pull this shade a little. Yeah, that's a little better. Well, I did set this up to would be going live at 5:15, and I went into the controls for YouTube. I'm guessing I have to do some more research on that because as I clicked on it, it just wouldn't kick in. And I'm sure that's operator error and nothing to do with YouTube's algorithms or subroutines. Every time I think I got modern technology figured out, it kicks me in the ass. I'm used to it after 20 plus years or so. So what am I here about? On November 3rd will be my birthday, which is in 3 days. I need subscribers on BBS Radio 1. BBS, not BBC, but BBS Radio 1. And these are the programs. These are the amounts. $2.99 is the basic. $5.99 is the silver. $9.99 is the gold. $19.99 is the platinum, and $49.99 is the diamond. That's what they have available. I need to get I need enough subscribers that will total to over $200. And that's not a lot, especially when you figure this country has 330 million people in it. So what separates what I do from what everybody else does? One, I occasionally have guests and we talk about pressing issues without a lot of fanfare, without a lot of opinionated crap. And I have done multiple videos over the last 2 years. You can go to my page on Jeff Dawson on YouTube, 59, that covered the hot topics that were going on, especially the riots of 2020, mixing sports with politics. I wore out Greg Abbott over the power failure we suffered in the winter of 2020. I've gone over the Georgia voting bill that caused all the crap and the All-Star game moved out. I just read the bill and left it up to the listener. And that's what I do. I'll lay the facts out there. I'm not like Fox, MSNBC, CNN, any of these networks, because they're all opinion hours now. They don't just give the facts as is. They want to provide facts based on their already established opinion. I don't do that. I will discuss any issue at great length, just like Dusty Baker. If you caught this recently, that it's a black eye for baseball that there are no black players on the World Series roster. Well, Dusty, while he's complaining about it, how many black players are on the Houston Astros? How many are on your roster? You've been there 2 years. You've had a lot to do with the players that come in and play for this team. I'm sure that you and James Click sat around saying, we don't have any black players on our team. We need to change that. No, you all sat down, you looked at the players available, you looked at the pieces you needed, and that's who you went after, and race was not important. Performance was important. And that's it. That's all you were after. But now for him to come out and make this ludicrous statement, these are the things that I talk about. I'm not a racist. I had one guy call me that when I worked for a construction company, and he found out real quick that I was not. I had a Mexican superintendent come in whimpering and whining. And I told him to shut the hell up and get out of my office and handle this problem. Then I had a white foreman come in, and he came in whimpering and whining. And I said, get the hell out of my office and take it elsewhere because I'm not interested. And then this black kid that was standing there, I mean, he was just, they called him Green Hats, which he was a new employee. And I just looked at him. He goes, you're not a racist. And I said, no, but I'm going to fire your black ass if you don't get out of my office. I don't give a damn what your color is. All I care is that you go to work and you do what you were paid to do. If you don't want to do that, hit the road. I don't care. It really is that simple. I called out Jeff Bezos when they had Blue Lives Matter t-shirts for sale on Amazon. When all this wokeness, censorship crap popped up. I mean, it's just like YouTube. I had a book trailer for my book, Occupation. It has a vampire biting into the swastika. And that's what the book's about. Vampires taking on the Third Reich. No hate speech on it. Nothing. YouTube banned it. They took it down. For what purpose did they take it down? It violates our community standards. It had been running for 9 years without one complaint, not one objection. In fact, it won several awards for originality, and they just eliminated it because they could. In fact, I'll show you one. I had it made up into a 3x2 poster. So you're not going to be able to see all of it. I'll have to scroll it up and down. I'll back up a little. Okay. You can see some of it. That is Svetlana. She is one of the main characters, and she is biting into that flag. That's it. That's a poster. They're $10 a piece, plus shipping, which is running around $4. They banned it. That's the book cover. That was the first book cover. Amazon banned it. So we had to come up with a second book cover, which is good, but it's definitely not as impactful as that one. Amazon Deutsche, not Amazon Deutsche, Facebook Deutsche banned it, which I can understand. The swastika has been banned in the country since the end of World War II, and you know everything that the Nazis did, which was really bad. The concentration camps, and what's sad is to this day, there are now people saying it never happened. I guess that's why Auschwitz is still there. And other memorials, Sobibor, Belznak, Buchenwald, Theresienstadt, you know, just go through the list. There are reminders of what the Germans did, because Eisenhower, when he found out about these camps, I mean, our guys couldn't believe it. In fact, it was probably the first time George Patton was violently ill when his army captured one of them, and they saw what was going on. But Eisenhower got all the photographers and said, you shoot every foot of film and every photograph you can, because in 100 years, people will say this never happened. They're hard hitting. I could do a list, but if you go to BBS Radio 1, you can see the archive. And I don't ramble. In fact, it was a couple of weeks ago where I'm usually only allowed a 1 hour time slot. And that hour hit, and I didn't get a message in the chat box that your time's up. Okay. So what was it? I don't know. The show behind me said, okay, that's it. We're done. We're out. We're out. Instead of just rambling on and on. And you see that on the networks today. They just ramble on. And I just love it when they have a guest and they ask them a question and they aren't prepared for the response and start blah, 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 blah. Well, if I have a guest on, that's what they are. You want to be a guest on BBS Radio 1, it's $100. And I tell you what, that's cheap. Because I have seen what some of these people charge, and I have been on some of these where they'll charge you $1,500 and you don't get squat. You get nothing. They claim that they have this broad audience, but when it comes down to it, nothing happens. They show you all the stats. I mean, I was on one, and God, I spent way too much money with these people, and it's just zero return. Well, look how many subscribers I have, and look at all this, and look at all that. Well, I look at it, I want real subscribers. I want people that actually are engaged. Sensibly, logically, and respectfully. I have done many posts through the year on Facebook that were political, or they became political. Like one was the Stars and Bars. This guy I knew, I don't even know if we're still associated. If I'm rubbing my eyes, I apologize. I had eye surgery for my lids and this stuff down here, so they're still healing and still weeping, but not like there was. In fact, I eliminated all the pictures of that I took from the surgery because, like, oh, nobody wants to look at that. I mean, looking at this mug is bad enough, but that's beside the point. Stars and Bars, because one guy was talking about his grandfather and how he, or great grandfather, and how he'd just be rolling over in his grave because those idiots that stormed the Capitol, one of them had the Stars and Bars. And it's like, really, okay, get over it. We know about the Civil War, but it's still our history. You might not like it. You might be offended by it. Well, do you think those people in the South enjoyed Sherman's march through Georgia? No. Militarily, it was thought to be a sound plan. Well, I looked at Sherman's march as the same thing as what we did in World War II with our bombing of German and Japanese cities. They'll forgive you, but they're not going to forget that you just killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. For what purpose? That wasn't warfare, and it was actually the British who were doing the worst of it. They just wanted to flatten every German city there was because they went through the Blitz, which, if you're not familiar with the London Blitz in 1940, the Germans were going to implement Operation Sea Lion, which was the invasion of England. Had to cross the channel. That's not easy to do. As we found out in June 6th, and then a horrible, not a hurricane or typhoon, but something very like a gale would probably be a better term, rolled through the English Channel and knocked out one of our mulberries, which was a temporary port. I mean, the weather is just horrible there. And it was bad. So the Germans were hitting every military base in southern England. We got to clear a path. We got to get rid of all airfields. wipe out the RAF, or at least send them back north of London to where we can dominate the skies during this invasion. And luckily for us, a German bomb crew got lost in the dark and dropped their bombs on London, which at that point, no civilian city had been hit, except for Rotterdam. And Rotterdam, they tried to stop because Holland had surrendered. But since communications weren't that good back then, the Luftwaffe had already taken to the skies, and they couldn't get the message to them soon enough. And by the time they did get it to the Luftwaffe High Command, the planes were already over Rotterdam, which was a wooden city, dropping their bombs. And the Germans heavily, profusely apologized for that. They were horrified at what they had done. So this bomber, by accident, drops bombs on London. And it does kind of like when we bombed Tokyo after Pearl Harbor. The damage was minimal. There were casualties, and bombs falling in a civilian area are going to result in casualties, just like when we hit Tokyo. Winston Churchill was furious, and he told Harris, "You get every bomber you can." Dowling, he got with Dowling and said, "You get every bomber you can, and you go hit Berlin." Of course, he's like, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "I don't care. They bomb London. Now you send them a message." So Dowling got all the planes he could. There's no fighter escort. The Germans don't have night fighters yet, because they're still kind of playing with this level of not integrity is not the word, but they're still abiding by a chivalrous conduct code. Civilians are off limits. So he bombs Berlin, and Adolf Hitler loses his mind, which was a good thing because he told Goering to flatten London. Now, 40,000 Londoners would die during the 6-month blitz. But what it did, it diverted the Germans' attention from what their initial primary goal was of defeating the RAF. They were within 2 weeks of sweeping the skies of the Allied Air Force. That's how close victory was for Germany. Did you know that? Well, these are the things that I will talk about, like the stars and bars. It was probably it might have been a 3-page article. And what amazed me was it really did start a good discussion. But I could definitely tell who of my friends were liberal and who weren't. And one of my friends, her grandfather fought in the Civil War, so she had some good insight. And a lot of the liberals just, well, it does offend me. Well, why? Why? And one person said, well, there are no monuments in Germany to any of those that served in World War II. I said, wrong. You better go look that up. And to this day, do you think our military doesn't use Robert E. Lee's tactics? Of course they do, because he was a brilliant statistician. When you look at the amount of men he had and the resources he had versus the North, it's just ridiculous. They're so badly outnumbered. But he was a master at defense. In fact, that's where he got his start, down in the Mexican War. He was a brilliant fortifier. He could defend anything. And that's what he did. And that's why it took Grant so long to knock them out. Because the ring of fortifications around Richmond to Petersburg were just diabolical. symbolically devastating. I mean, anybody that wanted to go in against that, you're going to pay for it. And that's why Grant told Lincoln, you know, take off the reins, let me do what I want to. But I will either win or I won't come back. And a lot of the Northern press was hammering Grant that his strategy wasn't working. And luckily for Ulysses, he just ignored them. Now, Lincoln had to fend off the vipers in D.C. and the press that couldn't stand him. But Grant kept stretching Lee thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner until he finally broke. He had run out of men, and he just couldn't hold the North back. He didn't want to throw in the towel, but he realized that I can go no longer. It wasn't like the Japanese were going to fight to the last man. Lee could have, but he realized this is pointless. We can't win. We just can't win. It's time to surrender, like Germany did. You know, look at the amount of prisoners we captured, and it's not even a thimbleful compared to what went on in the West. In the East, they were fighting. They were fighting to the very end. I mean, you know, look at Okinawa, 100,000 Japanese. Would we capture a couple hundred? If that would have been a Western battlefield, we'd probably captured over 20,000. Because we know when we're beat. And the Japanese, no. Didn't matter. One man would stand before 1,000 and would gladly sacrifice his life for the emperor. The topics that I cover, I don't care what it is. But I will do my research. I will put the points out there, and we can discuss them in a free forum. And isn't that what we need today? Honesty, integrity, a lot of truth, and not a lot of opinion. I mean, a good example was ERCOT and their utter failure in February of 2020. None of the people on the ERCOT board had ever turned a wrench in their life. One of them was an economist from, was it Frankfurt or Dresden? What the hell's a German doing on the board of ERCOT? Another one was a legal analyst from Michigan, or she was a regulator. None of these people had any business being on the board. And what's sad is none of them paid the price, even though we suffered, what was it, over $1 billion in damages and was at least a dozen deaths because of stupidity and poor management. No one was held accountable. The Utility Commission, the Texas legislature, the governor, and ERCOT. Nobody was held accountable. It'll happen again. And I mirrored that with, I was down here in the winter of 83, 84, which it was just as bad of a cold spell, only it lasted longer and it went all the way to Houston. Houston was frozen. How do I know? Because my wife and I went down there for the Bluebonnet Bowl that Oklahoma State was playing in. Couldn't believe it. Thought, we're getting out of this cold. Oh, we never got out of it. Houston was frozen. The Astrodome was cold. Oh, good God, it was cold in there until enough people fell in that we could survive off of each other's heat. But we didn't have blackouts back then. We didn't have this major disaster. Those are the issues that I discuss. Like a current one. We know there's a midterm coming up, right? Yes. Are you a registered voter? And I don't care who you vote for. Are you registered? If not, it's too late. But you should have been. And if you are registered, now go vote. Not because the NFL tells you to. I saw that commercial this weekend. Now all of a sudden the NFL wants to get into politics. Well, they got into politics when they allowed that BLM flag in San Francisco. I don't know if it's still flying there or not, but I remember when they put that up, and then I wrote an article about that. Don't mix my sports and politics. Because if you go to a sporting event, do you really care who they voted for, or do you care who they support? I care who they support. I don't want to see Biden shirts and Trump shirts and all that crap and slogans on everyone's shirts. In fact, I wouldn't even let them in the stadium, especially a college stadium. Anybody who's been to a college football game knows how rabid those fans are. We don't need politics in our sports because that's our only avenue of escape anymore. I can be sitting in a group of Democrats watching the Rangers win, and I can cheer with them and not know they're Democrats, nor would they know I'm a conservative Republican, because we don't care. We are there to support and cheer for our team. And that's at any level, college, high school, junior high, little league. Do you really care who that person voted for? I mean, you'll figure it out sooner or later. But what does that have to do with the game that you're watching? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Cheer for your team. That's what you should be doing. Those are the issues that I go over. And I was talking about the midterms. And I just laughed when Fox came up with their power rankings and their power team. Power of what? Stupidity? Ignorance? Really? It's a show. And remember, what I do on BBS Radio 1 on Dawson's Domain, it's not a show, even though it's entitled that, because a show is for entertainment. Well, if you watch the major networks, that's what they all call it. What a great show. What a great show. What a great show. What a great show. Back in the day, we called it a broadcast, and that's what I do. I broadcast. I will throw some entertainment in there with some sly remarks or a touch of humor, but it's a broadcast. Plain and simple. That's all it is. Here's the topic. Here's the research. Here's what we're going to discuss. If you agree, great. You can call in and comment. They actually have a live chat, which I don't understand how that works half the time, because I have to go to Facebook to see the live chat, even though there's a chat box where the program's set up, but I can't read it. For whatever reason, I've actually asked the producers, why can't I read this? And they go, well, we don't know. Okay, fine. But if you disagree and dissent, that's fine too. If you want to be a guest, if you have a differing opinion, that's fine. We will discuss it freely, like I did with my post on Facebook, for those who didn't agree with what I posted. And if anybody got out of line and got their feelings hurt, it's like, well, one, I would always say, keep it classy. Keep it classy. And if somebody didn't, then I took their comments down and they would unfriend me. That's fine. Then that means you aren't grown up enough to deal with the issues at hand and talk about them in not a normal tone, but a civil tone. I had plenty of people disagree with me, and I would say, okay, well, here we go. but I wouldn't attack them. I don't do that. That serves no purpose, because the minute you attack someone, what do? Well, they just bow up and shut down, and the discussion is over. I have some associates that are like that. If they don't agree with what I say, well, okay, what about this, and this? And just recently, I do a COVID report once a week, and this gal who claims to be an independent, she's not an independent. I dated her for 6 months. She is not an independent, but she wanted to claim that. It's like, no, you're not. You're a Democrat. Why don't you admit it? No, I'm not. Got all fluffed up, and it's like, yes, you are. And instead of addressing the issues at hand, then she started diverting, deflecting, and I was like, really? That has nothing to do with this. And I just stopped the discussion with her. There was no point. She's a good friend. But, friendships can be strained over politics. So unless you can talk about it civilly, which I do, then all is lost. You're done. And we will continue to have this deep divide in the country. Now, I didn't mean to go on for 30 minutes, but I am asking for subscribers. And I'll go over the rates again, and it's BBS Radio 1. You'll find them on Facebook, or put it in your search bar and it'll pop up. If you see BBC, you're in the wrong place. You want BBS Radio 1. The basic plan is $2.99. The silver is $5.99. The gold is $9.99. The platinum is $19.99, and the diamond is $49.99. And as you can tell, it doesn't take a lot of subscribers to support the program. And it's good content. And I do it twice a month on Saturday at 2 o'clock. But if I don't get enough subscribers, then I guess I will stay on YouTube and continue to do it here. But I really like the format. I like the audience reach they have. And I'm the only sane one on that airwave. I have looked at some of their shows. If you're one of these people that we're going to try and storm Area 51, they got the programs for you. If you believe that we can live for 1,000 years, they got programs for that. Out of this world, they got some of the most they put Rod Serling to shame with some of the topics. And I've listened to him. One guy says he is a medium for JFK. I'm sorry, but what a bunch of crap. And people believe this. Why, I don't know. So they got plenty of fringe stuff on there that I can't even shake a stick at. And then they got another show that I've tried to watch. I think it's called Chuck and Julie. And she's just angry. She's just always angry. And her husband just kind of sits there like, well, yeah. But she's just ranting and raving over what I don't know. And there was a guy on there that he used to have a program with Ed Asner before he died. And of course, that was left wing. And there was no talking to those people. You can talk to me, whether you agree or disagree. Now, and for those people that do agree with my opinions, doesn't mean we always agree. I have conservative friends that I would just have to shut down and say, why don't you shut the hell up? Where do you get your information? And I always like it when they say, well, they said, and I go, who's they? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know who they is, then I don't want to hear it. Or, well, this is what Fox said. I don't care what Fox said. What do you think? What did you research it? Did you look it up? Kind of like when that HR 1 bill was up. God, what a horrible bill. Absolutely horrible. And I read the whole thing. It's like 750 pages. I read it all. Made all types of notes and highlights. And just like there were a few good things in there on election reform, but other than that, it was just disaster, absolute disaster. And you could see whichever party was in control could easily influence any election they wanted to because they would have the power. I mean, that bill went into when you can do advertising on television, and that it would have to go before a board to be approved, especially 30 days before the election. Well, that was a direct result of the Hunter Biden laptop, that you can't have that, quote, October surprise. So we have to authorize and approve your campaign ad, really. And who are you? Conservative? Liberal? Well, if you see an ad going after your candidate, obviously you're not going to approve it. And that high school seniors were going to have to vote. And they were actually going to set up a class for high school seniors to pass to get their diploma. I mean, we had civics in junior high, so we understood the value of voting, but this was going to be mandatory, not an elective, mandatory that you took this. Civics, we learned how the government worked. No, you're going to take this whether you like it or not. Really? And we're going to tell you how voting works, and we're going to tell you how candidates work, and basically who to vote for. That's indoctrination. We're not doing that. We're just not doing it. So if you like what you hear, subscribe to BBS Radio 1. And I will also talk about all of my books. I have written 18. The glare is killing the card. Let me turn it that way. There. Can you see it? No, not that well. But it's LDDJ Enterprises. And the two books I have on the card are Love's True Second Chance and Gateway Pioche. The first one, it's a true story of my high school sweetheart. We reunited after 30 years. I knew she had breast cancer and I would lose her 7 months later. But it's not about that. It's about how much love we packed in the 7 months that we got to finish what we started so long ago. And Gateway Pioche is a modern day science fiction time travel government conspiracy book. Got a lot of baseball in it too. But the synopsis of it is, after World War II, we brought a lot of those German scientists over here. And they start building a Fourth Reich in our government. And they start developing weapons that will help them achieve their goals. It's a 3-book series. Gateway Pioche, Destination DC, and Target Berlin. It has more twists and turns than the law allows. And when I wrote it, the first book, when it was done, it's like, we're done, it's finished. People said, no, there has to be more. And it took me 6 months to figure out, okay, what else do you do with this? Because we can't go back in time anymore. And that was the funnest part, because you have 4 students, Mookie, Abdul. God, it's been so long since I wrote it. Judith and Larry. Abdul gets to go back to see what happened to Judas Iscariot. Mookie goes back to see who assassinated JFK. Judith goes back to kill her grandfather, Martin Bormann, Hitler's secretary. And Larry gets to go back and see if we actually landed on the moon in '69, or was it a combination of of the astronauts actually being around the moon and then a stage where they landed on the moon. You get to see how that works out. That was a lot of fun. And if you're a football fan, I'll just throw this one in there. Especially if you like the movie or the book North Dallas 40. Well, I have the Irving Titans, which is a satire of the Cowboys in the 90s, just like North Dallas 40 was a satire of the Cowboys in the 70s. So you got a 20-year span, but we still got a lot of stuff going on. It's a lot of fun. All right, I will cut this loose. I hope you all will subscribe. It'd be a great birthday present so I can keep that program running. This is Jeff Dawson, Dallas, Texas. And I will probably do another one on Wednesday. And I'll put it in the link, but I'll have to go live because I can't figure out how to get it to work off of that. Have a great evening. Hopefully we get game 3 of the World Series, but looking at the radar earlier, doesn't look promising. We'll talk to you later.